Welcome to Knights of Roleplay, an adventuring podcast. This is an actual play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons podcast. Royalty-free music provided by Kevin MacLeod, Plate Mail Games, and Tabletop Audio. And now, to adventure. Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Buckner. I'm the primary Dungeon Master for Knights of Roleplay, an adventuring podcast. And this episode is a special cross-promotion with our friends at Old Men Rolling Dice. They have their own live play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, although they've switched format a little bit since COVID, but we'll go into that a little more later. And we're primarily going to talk about some of our favorite campaign settings. And since we're all of the middle age group, we're going to be talking probably mostly about second edition kind of stuff, stuff from the 80s. So we'll just get right into the discussion right now. So if you guys, we have Jeremy and Jason from Old Men Rolling Dice. If you guys just want to talk a little bit about your podcast, I did listen to the episode about the 80s movies, which I thought was great. And I listened to one of your live plays, which I have some questions about. But if you just want to talk a little bit about your podcast so that our listeners with Knights of Roleplay can be familiar with you guys, then, feel free.
Jay, do you want to take this?
No, you started rolling, and I'll jump in. I'll interrupt when I see it's appropriate.
Yeah, you interrupt me. So, so we're Old Men Rolling Dice. We started out as a live play podcast. That was certainly the plan. We started by playing Princes of the Apocalypse. Nice. And we jammed that into a homebrew setting as opposed to the Forgotten Realms or something like that, just to have a little bit more freedom with it. And we did that for our first year. There's probably about 12 or 13 episodes published, and there's probably another maybe 6 or 7 episodes sitting on my hard drive that we really got tired of editing those up. We were not recording them properly. We had the wrong equipment, and there was a lot of editing going into it, and it was taking a lot of time. And then COVID came along, like you said. Yeah. And we did not meet for live plays anymore, and we switched our live play stuff over to Twitch and started streaming. And Jason and I started interviewing people.
Yeah, we had been interested, I think, maybe in covering a couple of different topics that weren't directly related to live play. And it was like, well, we're already here, and we're already working in the format. And Jeremy and I both work shift work. So occasionally we're around on a Wednesday during the day and nobody else is here. It was really easy suddenly just to pour a cup of coffee and touch on a topic that maybe we were both interested in. And I think
it's generally not coffee, though.
So I think it was coffee once.
I think so.
One cup of coffee.
I think so.
But not just that. I think it was one of those things where this has really been a great outlet. And I think we've talked about this a lot. I mean, the pandemic 2020, even rolling into 2021, has been a rough time for a lot of people. And I know I've probably said this exact same point in a previous podcast. It's easy to get caught up in all this sort of negative stuff that's happened. And I think part of what we've been trying to do, especially lately, is try and sort of like, you know what, there's got to be some silver linings out there. There has to be something that sort of gets you from A to B these days, something that gives you something to look forward to on the weekend. And so sort of trying to throw these topics out, and maybe even we've become really interested in sort of community building, like realizing that an online community, a gaming community, a community of friends, and even sort of the community you live in is something that maybe we're not contributing massively to it, but it never hurts. Any little bit you can do to sort of build that up and share, kind of what you're doing with other people and hear about the things they're doing is something we're trying to sort of touch on these days.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been seeing like a lot of the sort of community support stuff. I've looked at other podcasts. When I first wanted to get into this one, I started listening to all these D&D podcasts like Dungeons and Daddies and Venture Maidens and Adventure Zone and all these different things. And I was really excited about all of the support from all the community, everybody trying to build up all these cool ideas. And I was learning all these things that I didn't really know and sharing the passion of the game with everyone, and not just D&D, but lots of other tabletop games too, both role playing and otherwise. So this is fun. I like doing cross promotions. I did one with another podcast very early on in our podcast history. And so then I saw you guys and I thought, I bet you these guys are right around my age and we probably have a lot in common. So we should definitely cross promote.
Yeah. Old Men Rolling Dice, the title kind of, it paints a picture for people. I think we are the old men literally rolling dice from, I got my start with Redbox and
that's awesome.
Every edition since. Jason, I think did you start in advance AD&D? You started with
I started in AD really early 80s, 80, say 81, 82. I've been trying to track it down. My memory gets a little hazy sometimes. I didn't pay attention back then a lot.
That's cool though. You guys are a little advanced for me. I started in 86.
86? Okay, no, I started in 84. Yeah. Gotcha. I was 10 in 84 to broadcast my age.
So Jason's just really old, is what
he is. He is the old. He is the old of Old Men Rolling Dice.
But I don't think but I gamed sort of hard then, and then I took a very long casual break.
You did
just recently, sort of in the last couple of years, getting back into it.
Because you didn't play second, third, or fourth, right?
I think I played some 3.5 with you guys a little bit because I remember buying the books for it.
Maybe
but it might have been with Mark too.
You might be right.
I missed second entirely. I missed fourth entirely.
We didn't miss much.
No.
That seems to be the general consensus.
Did you play fourth, Chris?
I did. I mean, and I liked it at first, but then I grew to hate it very quickly.
You know what? This is my take on fourth edition. This is totally off topic for what we're going to talk about.
That's
but anyways,
fine. It's fine.
Fourth edition to me was a great option for someone that wanted to fantasy game.
Sure.
But if you had played Dungeons and Dragons before that, you clearly could see that this was not your game anymore. Like it had changed significantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like I look back on fourth and I go, geez, that game had some good stuff. Like I love the goon rules. I still have players that'll say, is it bloodied? Is the target bloodied?
We use that term. We use that.
Do you?
Term.
Yeah,
yeah,
see?
we do.
I mean, fourth is like the unwanted stepchild of Dungeons and Dragons.
The redheaded stepchild.
The redheaded stepchild. Yeah. I wasn't gonna say it.
Awkward
for the listeners,
there, right? Like,
yeah, I have red hair for the listeners.
However, Chris is the only one of the three of us that actually has hair on his head.
Thanks.
So for that, I mean, who cares what color it is? You've got it. We do not. But I think fourth. I think if you had introduced fourth and called it something totally different, I think it might have found its niche. But because it was sort of advertising itself as I'm Dungeons and Dragons, people just hated on it.
Yeah, it played very, very differently. And the one thing I did like about it was because they built it on a structure of like a video game. Mm-hmm. It was extremely balanced because they just applied the same formula to every class. So everything was balanced. Everything did the same amount of damage at the same level. And I didn't really feel like anything was overpowered in that system. But like you said, it was so different from a tabletop role-playing game where you're doing a little more theater of the mind, and it was more steeped in like, this is how you design a video game. And it was just very, very different. So I remember taking turns where we would have a combat and it would be like 30 minutes between my turn and then my next turn. And I was tracking like 10 conditions. And that was one of the things that drove me nuts about it. And I started to be like, oh my God, this is just so far from D&D. I don't think I could do it anymore.
Did you play any Pathfinder?
I didn't. I understand that it was constructed basically from people using 3.5 rules and then sort of having like a public playtest kind of a thing. And so they made their own system. And I thought that was a great idea. And I imagine Pathfinder was probably really awesome, but I went from fourth to fifth.
Yeah. So I was playing 3.5 and then fourth edition rolls around and we start playing it and we got a campaign going and we soon realized this is not our Dungeons and Dragons. So I'd heard good things about Pathfinder and I picked up Pathfinder. And it was great. Introduced it. We played Pathfinder for a lot of years. Pathfinder is great at 10th level and lower. And when your party gets to about 10th level, I've heard it called Pathfinder, and I would totally agree with that. The number of modifications. You're talking about like in 4th edition having to stack all these conditions and stuff.
Yeah.
Pathfinder gets like in my last Pathfinder campaign before we switched to 5th edition, we were literally running a spreadsheet at the table tracking buffs and debuffs for everyone.
Yeah. So Jason, you didn't take part in any of that.
You know what? Once again, I don't pay attention really well. I'm positive I was involved in those games because I'm pretty sure I remember complaining like, I think I rolled a 7, and 15 minutes later he convinced me it was an 18. I don't know how, but there was like, well, I'm flanked, and it's a favorite enemy, and then it just started rolling, right? And you're like, can we just roll 1 dice and just back in the day?
But there's people out there that like that kind of a game.
They do. They are.
And I thought I liked that kind of a game. I was like, yeah, that's what I want, all that crunch. And then 5th edition comes out, and I try 5th edition out, and I feel like I'm back in 2nd edition playing again, and I have so much more freedom and so much ability to homebrew on top of the 5th edition rules that I'm just like, well, I'm home now, because as much as I had a great time with Pathfinder, I don't want that crunchy stuff anymore. I can do everything here and so much quicker.
Exactly.
So, and I'm not saying 5th is perfect. I have some issues with 5th edition, but it's still it's still the best bang for the buck, in my opinion.
Okay. So
there's my rant.
That's all good. So I'm curious about, because I listened to a couple of your episodes. I listened to the 80s.
Yes.
And there was another one. I'm not sure if it was one of the Prince of the Apocalypse, but there was a session. I was trying to figure out what was going on with you guys, because it was a live play, and it sounded like you had maybe like 3 players, and they all had like 3 characters, and like they were getting killed, and you guys were like, I only have this guy left.
Oh, I bet you were listening to our Dungeon Crawl Classic game.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Can you explain to the listeners what that is? Because I'm confused by it. So
Dungeon Crawl Classics is sort of a throwback to original Dungeons and Dragons, even before Red Box. We're talking the white box that came out of Mr. Gygax's basement, and it goes back to that, and then it looks at. So we didn't really know what it was either, and there is an interview on our podcast library with Judge Brian, and Judge Brian is a friend of a friend who we were curious about this old school gaming, because I mean, we're old guys. Go ahead, Jay.
Can you give me one? Okay, so it's by Goodman Games, and it was after we played it. It was on their website, and they were talking about how happy they were. They'd launched some products, and they're like, we've been receiving reviews for years, and they're like, our favorite review of Dungeon Crawl Classics is still a review that is from the first year it was released, and they're like, we still release it in our press every once in a while. And I have got a copy of that review. It is like only a couple lines long. So Dungeon Crawl Classics for the uninitiated is, this isn't your father's D&D. It's your batshit crazy uncle's D&D. Straight from the smoky basement with faded blacklight posters on the walls and 80s Man of War blaring on an old tape deck. You might turn up your nose at first, but once the 7-sided dice start rolling, you'll find yourself sucked in.
So
it's like,
nice.
That's a great example. It is a throwback, and it is trying to grab a piece of nostalgia. You should probably, if you're going to play Dungeon Crawl Classics, you should probably have some heavy metal playing somewhere.
I like metal.
So what Dungeon Crawl Classics?
What you were listening to? It was a funnel, right?
Yeah, it was a funnel adventure.
Something very specific to DCC is what everybody sits around the table, and you spend a couple of minutes making these absolutely generic level 0 characters, and it's totally random. 3d6 in the order they fall.
You don't have any control. Like, you don't sit down and go, I want to be a fighter.
Gotcha.
No, you just sit down and roll up 4 stat blocks.
Okay, you are a halfling chicken butcher. You have a meat cleaver, and you have a chicken.
Gotcha.
There's something in a cave down the road. You are in a party with a turnip farmer who has a pitchfork. They're like, and then they're like, whoever survives suddenly becomes first level characters.
And are in Dungeon Crawl Classics, it's called a judge, not a dungeon master. And the judge sort of our judge Brian has like great experience with the game, and how he explained it to us was, don't come to the table with a backstory. This funnel adventure where you play 4 0-level characters each is your backstory. And don't come to the table assuming that your characters know, like, oh, we know of the city of Waterdeep over there and Neverwinter in the north. He's like, your 4 characters have probably only been over the next hill. Sort of like the Samwise Gamgee line from Lord of the Rings, where like he's standing on the edge of the farmer's field, and he's like, I've never been a foot further from the Shire than I am right now. That's what all your characters are. So they don't know anything. And then in our case, in our funnel, there is this family, this spooky old house, the family of butchers, and it was dark. It got very dark very fast. So we played through a funnel.
It's all rolled and open. Like there's no DM screen or anything. Like
well, that's the way. I think there is a DM screen, but Brian played it very. Let the dice just fall where they fall.
Yeah, it was the first time we played. It was a heck of.
So the idea of the funnel is that story becomes your backstory, and you probably don't leave the funnel with all your characters. Mm-hmm. So if you start the funnel with 4 characters, by the end of the funnel, if you only have 1 character left, that character becomes level 1, and then your campaign continues from there. And they'll always remember the day they were with the mob outside of. If you play higher levels Dungeon Crawl Classics, it's not very much more forgiving. Like every time you cast a spell, you don't, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, you don't run out of casts on your spells. You keep rolling. As long as they're successful, you keep casting. But the moment it's unsuccessful, like you're cursed horribly. Bad things happen. Yeah.
Well, the whole thing, all that stuff you guys are describing sounds really interesting and cool. I'd never heard of anything like that. So that's really awesome. Thank you for explaining it.
I think anybody who likes D&D, if you get a chance to run a Dungeon Crawl Classics game, especially a 0-level funnel, tons of fun.
It might not be for everybody, but just to say you've done it, and people start talking about old school gaming, you can say, no, I know.
At one point in that adventure, we open the attic door. We're climbing up in the attic. There's something up in the attic. And the DM rolls, and my character disappears into the attic. Dead. Just dead.
Just dead.
Yeah. The damage was like, there is no like negative 10 or there's no death saves. If you hit 0 hit points, you're dead. So boom, I was up in the attic, and whatever was up there got me, and I was dead. And it was that fast. There was no like, oh, can we save? No, we can't save them.
That's cool. That's awesome. And I'm curious, you said that when COVID came out, you guys stopped doing the live play. Mm-hmm. Now we switched over to doing stuff on Zoom and doing more theater of the mind, although I tried using minis and a camera for a little while, but that got a little bit clunky. So we just went pure theater of the mind. Did you guys not want to go onto Zoom when COVID happened?
There was some discussion to do something like that.
Yeah.
I got very excited about streaming. I'd been asked by a couple people, do you guys stream a game? And so I really wanted to give it a shot. But not everybody that played in our podcast wanted to be live on
camera. Yeah,
That's
same thing with my group. Yeah. So you guys are doing live streaming now with your adventures?
We're doing live streaming now, but only myself and 2 players. Myself and 2 players came with me.
Gotcha.
And then we found 2 other players, and so we now have a party of 4. So we stream on Sunday nights. We're doing Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and then we've started another stream on Wednesday nights where we run Icewind Dale.
Okay. Do you want to give your Twitch channel?
Sure. twitch.tv/DM_Jeremy. Okay. We did not go with Old Men Rolling Dice because at first I wasn't sure that it was an Old Men Rolling Dice project. And then it started rolling along well. And I'm like, well, we're here now. So we use it as our Old Men Rolling Dice stream, but it doesn't have the Old Men Rolling Dice tag.
Okay. I was just curious.
A lot of online games. Okay. I just don't necessarily record and release a lot of it. Like we have a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
Sword and Wizardry. Yeah, I think everybody's gaming in a bunch of different formats and a lot of theater of the mind stuff, which is really awesome once you get rolling into it. Theater of the mind is
far easier
much
on
more
this
like old
format.
school gaming, right?
Yeah, it's easier than when I tried to use the minis over Zoom, and it was just a pain. Theater of the mind was so much better.
And I had to self-teach myself Roll20. It's not as easy as people make it sound. And then this new group that I DM on Wednesday nights, they wanted to use Fantasy Grounds. So I had to teach myself Fantasy Grounds as well. And like, these are not anybody who decides to play with those, virtual tabletops.
Yeah.
Bless them, because it's not an easy thing to pick up, especially from the DM side of things. It takes a little bit of time, and you need to have some patient players. And fortunately, I had that. And now I consider myself relatively proficient with D20. I'm still learning Fantasy Grounds, but
okay.
I have some questions about your game though now too.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So you guys run Spelljammer, and we're gonna talk about some old settings tonight.
Yeah,
Spelljammer is like. It's a favorite of mine, but every time I say to someone, let's do a Spelljammer game, the eyes roll. Like you either love this setting or you don't love this setting.
There's nobody who's like just neutral with it. Everybody has a very strong feeling about Spelljammer. It elicits excitement from some people and that 4th edition anger from some people. Yeah. It's funny that it's been on the fringes for so long. And you kind of almost forget about it, and then every once in a while,
I love the setting. But what I want to know, Chris, is first of all, like when you sat down and went, we're gonna put together a game, and so what brought you back to 2nd edition to find Spelljammer, and then what is it about Spelljammer that like makes you go, this is what I need to run?
Okay, so I've been playing D&D for 35 years about right now. And, I experienced everything from advanced, all the way through. Like I played advanced D&D and then advanced 2nd edition. And basically I started in advanced, and, so I saw Dark Sun, Ravenloft, Spelljammer, all the settings. I one time or another, and Spelljammer was something that I don't think I ever actually played. I'm trying to think. I don't think I ever actually played Spelljammer at any point, but I always thought it was awesome. And I think it was because, like you said, most people that I knew didn't want to play it, but I did. So we just never did as a group. And so I've been playing for all that time, mostly as a player. And then in 2015, I decided to run a game for my wife and some of our friends. And I was doing that with my other group, where we'd been playing on Thursdays for like 12 years, and it was mostly the same group. And it was my friend who had introduced D&D to me when I was a teenager. And when I started my own group, I did like 2 or 3 campaigns. One was set on Innistrad, which was the Magic the Gathering plane, and one was Sword Coast. And then at one point I was getting toward the end of, I think it was the Innistrad game, and I said, so what do I want to play next? And I'm not sure exactly why, but I started running through my mind of all the different campaign worlds that I've been in. And I thought, ooh, Spelljammer. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I love the mix. I loved it back in the 80s, but I never played it. And I just was rolling through my head thinking about different campaign settings. And that one popped up, and I just got instantly excited about it. And I thought about all these different sci-fi tropes. I love Next Gen and Star Wars and, Star Trek, Star Wars, anything. And I just thought of all these different adventure ideas that I could write. And I said, that's it. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to do Spelljammer. So.
And was it a hard sell for any of your players? Like when you brought it up?
No, not really. I mean, the people in this game have had virtually no experience with D&D. I think like John had said that he had tried it once in college or something, but basically they had virtually no experience. And I had done the Lost Mines of Fandover, the 5th edition starter. Mm-hmm. And I just done that so they could see what it was like. And like, I was always a player. I did do a little bit of DMing, but I really, really wanted to just be a player. I didn't have any interest in being a DM. And then I introduced this group of people who hadn't really played before to the game. And like, it just felt really awesome to be that person who was helping them to get into this hobby, which has been a huge part of my life forever. And then the next thing I knew, I was doing like a Twitch thing with a bunch of new players for for Extra Life, to try to raise money for Boston Children's Hospital. And then every opportunity I had to introduce a new group of players, I was like just like eager. I so badly wanted to do it because, and then I found this love of DMing by basically introducing new players to the game. Whereas when I played with my veteran players and I was a DM, like there's just, I mean, I love my friends very much. I'm not trying to diss on them, but there was so much, everybody thinks they know what they're doing. They think their way is the right way. There's so much arguing and infighting. And like for me, DMing in that environment wasn't really all that fun.
You're preaching to the choir for Jason.
We actually did a podcast in the last couple of weeks that is absolutely near and dear to my heart, and is exactly what you just said. During COVID, I've had to start gaming with some new groups, and I have gamed with a group of brand new players. Like this is their first time. And it is amazing,
isn't it?
What they bring to the table, the level of energy. And actually, there was a point that a bunch of the dungeon masters I interviewed had said it is fantastic for older players too, because they become super excited about sharing this hobby they love with these people. And it's like, it totally changed. Oh my, it is insane how you have literally hit on like probably 3 of the 5 points we made in a podcast only a couple of weeks ago. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
It's just nice to share and build.
It is. It really is.
New players are great, but to bring a new player into Dungeons and Dragons and go, here's Spelljammer, I think that's not something that many people can say, that their first experience with Dungeons and Dragons was a Spelljammer campaign.
True. And you had asked me what made me get into it, and then you had a second question. Did I miss that one?
I think no. Well, it's just sort of why Spelljammer of all the ones you could, but you kind of hit on that.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
You have a love of like sci-fi and
yeah.
So in your Spelljammer campaign, are we talking about like are laser guns available, or because when I played Spelljammer, I ran a Spelljammer campaign and it was all like we didn't add any tech. We just added. We just did like straight Spelljammer spells and all the rest of it. We didn't add any technological advancements, and we had a blast with it. I really liked it. So did you add those elements of science fiction to it?
What I have done is, like, I saw in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide, the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, that they had rules for like laser guns,
yes,
and grenades and all these different kinds of modern technology and futuristic technology. And I looked at the rules, and, what they had there was just way too powerful. If you look at like a laser gun or something, or a antimatter rifle, it's like, why would anybody ever have a sword if they could do like 3d6 with this gun at like a range of like 100 feet? And so what I tried to do is I really sort of tried to flex my homebrew muscles by trying to make a laser pistol, a laser rifle, a laser sword, that would all be balanced, so that if you were going through the list of equipment and you were making a first level character, that the futuristic weapons that I made would be balanced with all the rest of them. And so that you would basically, there wouldn't be a clear choice. I wouldn't have the whole party with just laser swords, because they're not as good as a longsword depending on what you're trying to do. So I customized a laser sword, a laser rifle, and a laser pistol, and I made up an energy shield. And again, it's not as good as a regular shield, but it's better against laser weapons. So it's kind of like, a balance. So I really just homebrewed the sci-fi stuff, and I don't use like the crystal spheres. They just fly out in space. There's no crystal spheres. You can go to any planet you want. You don't have to go through the phlogiston, which are people that don't.
So there's no fire phlogiston accidents. That's excellent.
No. For people that don't know, basically the Spelljammer is based on, like, you have planetary systems within these crystal spheres, and the crystal spheres float in the phlogiston, which is this rainbow colored, gaseous kind of very flammable material. And, you can kind of travel from one to the other. If it's difficult to do, but I just threw all that out, and I've heard other DMs have done the same thing. It's basically like the universe is just wide open. You can go to any planet you want. And if you want to say that planet is Greyhawk, and that planet is Dragonlance, and that planet is Dark Sun, then that's what you do. And so that's what I did. And I've definitely modified a lot of the rules for Spelljammer. I threw them out the window, and some of them, and I just basically did my own sci-fi homebrew element of it. But I still kept, like, the air envelopes and the spelljamming helm, and a lot of the things that are fundamentally Spelljammer. I kept those and just made some modifications.
Excellent. I love that, and I think 5th edition is so good for homebrewing on, that I can see that would probably be.
You almost like homebrew even almost everything you run, even when it's purchased, right? Like, I mean, you always bring an element to it that's,
Yes.
sort of outside the box.
Yeah. My friend Dan, who introduced me to the game when I was like 13, he's a really really good world builder and an excellent storyteller, and he always had some kind of house rules all the time. Every campaign, he always had something, and it always gave that campaign a certain kind of flavor, something that you remember from just that one campaign. And so in this current campaign in Spelljammer, I added action points, which was a 4th edition thing. And but I made up my own rules. It's not the same as in 4th edition, but I added in there. And for my next campaign, which I'm thinking of actually doing my first ever completely homebrew setting, I'm thinking about this idea of having characters have like a knack, and they choose whatever their knack is at first level. And it could be like attack rolls, damage rolls, armor class, movement, initiative. But basically they will get a bonus that gradually increases as you go up a level, because that is their knack. And if they really want to change it when they go up a level, I'll let them change it, sort of like you can do with feats and other things. But yeah, I mean, I love house rules. I love.
So when you mix in your action points, do you remove inspiration as a mechanic, or do you keep that in as well?
I keep it in, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because sometimes the house rules that I've brought in have unintentionally been a little bit too powerful. And then I had to kind of try to readjust, and having action points and having advantage, there is like a certain game balance that was tweaked in a way that I didn't expect. And so I've had to modify a couple of things to try to balance that out a little bit. I mean, I've heard of situations where inexperienced DMs give people like these artifacts, and then they're kicking ass on everything. So then the DM makes their artifacts get blown up, and then the players are all pissed off and they hate, I mean, that's a lot of like very beginner DMs, and beginner players, but a smaller degree of that was happening with me, where I was like, this might be a little bit too powerful.
I think even experienced DMs that begin to, I'm saying this because I've done it. I think even experienced DMs make errors like that, because I think you start to experiment with mechanics.
Yeah.
You start to experiment with some things, and then all of a sudden, and you don't necessarily, you can see the immediate effect isn't going to be too bad, but then a few sessions later, you're like, oh, I'm starting to see a larger, I never thought of how that interacts with this or that thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, this is broken. So
I think from purely player perspective, the neat thing about doing the homebrews is it sort of brings back that whole thing about being a new player again. I'm suddenly playing in a world or in a situation where I can't recite all the rules. I don't know. There's something new. I don't know what this does. I don't know how that interacts. And it makes a fresh game again. And you're absolutely right. You can plan for everything you want. Players do. I do nothing but think about ways I can utilize something I have in a way maybe somebody didn't see. Being able to that's from a player's perspective. That's a huge part of the game for me. I love trying to find oh my God, I guess that works. That is always awesome.
My oldest son plays now, and for his birthday party, he asked, Dad, if I have all my friends over, can you DM a game for us? Mm-hmm. I was like, I would love to do that for you. What do you want to do? And he said, just make something up. It's got to, and I said, okay. My only rule is then it has to have a dungeon, and it has to have a dragon. If we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and lots of these guys haven't played before, it has to have a dungeon and it has to have a dragon. He was like, sounds great, do that. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And then we get this kid who's got the spell Destroy Water. So then he asks me, can I destroy? They're fighting, and he's like, can I destroy the water inside the target's eyeballs? Essentially blinding him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, really not the way the spell's supposed to be used. And of course, my rule lawyer in the back of my mind is going, there's already a spell called blindness. It's 2nd level. He's trying to do it with a 1st level spell. Anyways, we figured something out. I think we let him do it, and I think we implied some sort of penalty because the guy had really dry red eyes. I immediately thought of what's the commercial for red eyes with Ben? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it was fun to see some, like, none of my regular players would have ever tried pardon me, would have ever tried to destroy someone's eyeball by just destroying the water in it.
That's pretty interesting.
Would not have happened. Would not have happened. Interesting. So do you? So for Spelljammer, I just love this setting.
It's great.
First of all, is it GIF? Not Gith. I know Gith Yankee Gith's right. There's a hippo race.
Yes, I say.
Have you used them?
Yes, I do. I have the captain of the ship that they're on. His name is Braun. He is a GIF. He's like an older GIF, and Captain Braun is a GIF. He's the captain of their ship.
There's something about the hippo men, and they're sort of the artwork that I saw. They were sort of like colonial England.
Yeah, basically.
And I just the Jungle Book, Colonel Haughty, the elephant. I'm like, I want all my GIF to be like him. Like that's how I pictured him, just running this sort of militarized hippo brigade. And I was like, this is fantastic. And I'm sure I'm saying it's fantastic. I'm sure there's players out there that go like, if I meet a group of hippo men, I'm done. Like I'm done with this game.
Yeah, I was looking through I have the second edition PDFs, and I was looking through all the races. And I basically told everybody, you can play whatever race that you want, because this is, it's space. I mean, you can be anywhere at any time. And the game is centered on the Rock of Brawl, which is like this center point for the whole Spelljammer campaign. It gives you a place where it's sort of like a home base for the players. And so I described how there's mind flayers and beholders, and there's GIF, and there's Gith. Like you said, there is a distinction for people that don't know. And there's Tabaxi, which are the cat people, and I really like Thrakreen, so they're like an insectoid race, and so I included them, and I basically made up like a list of crewmen, or crew persons, and they had as many different races on it as I could think of, because I wanted to have them all be part of the crew. And I tried to think up different voices for some of them, although I'm not going too crazy with all the voices, but I tried to think up a personality and a little bit of a voice for each one of them. And so they have the players, and they have the captain and the crew, who are all NPCs. And it's definitely been a lot of fun to kind of have the interaction with the people on the crew and whatnot. And definitely there is a GIF as the captain.
Do you utilize have you come up with any sort of homebrew for ship-to-ship combat?
So far, no. I thought about it, and I said to myself, that would be really fun. And then I thought, that's way too much work for what I want to do right now.
Can I I'll make a suggestion here.
Yes.
If you don't have it yet, Ghosts of Saltmarsh has ship stat blocks. It's just like a monster stat block for the ship.
Actually, I think I took the stats for the ship from that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great way to do it. I remember having dogfights. Yeah, I remember having dogfights in old school Spelljammer, and like ballista rounds and catapult rounds, and the GIF, of course, the hippo men, they had cannons, so like it was they were even better at space combat. So the two things that stand out for me from Spelljammer were the ship to ship combat, and there was a sort of a mass combat calculator, so that if you had two crews, you could sort of make you sort of took the number of the crew, and then you added I think it was hit dice or something. There was a math. There was a lot of math. there was a math formula, so that you could have these large scale combats with your ships. And I actually, long after I stopped playing Spelljammer, I still referred back to their mass combat rules for some of my games.
Yeah, they have the mass combat rules even in the back of the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide for crowds, for groups. And I think I did pull my ship stats from Ghost of Saltmarsh, and the ship has ballista and it has catapult on it, and they've used it against creatures that were flying toward the ship. And but I haven't had an actual ship to ship yet, because I want to do it in a way that is very fantastic, and I don't want them to be just like throwing rocks from one ship to another, or shooting giant arrows from one ship to the other. I want it to be something more spectacular than that. So I haven't really pulled the trigger on it and put the work into it just yet, because I want to make it really cool. And life is making it a little bit difficult sometimes.
Absolutely.
But I do want to do a ship to ship battle at some point with them, and I want to make it really exciting. And I'm not going to pull the trigger until I really feel like it's going to be good. So I've got a million other science fiction tropes that I can use in the
What's
meantime.
the level of the party in that game?
Right now, the party is, honey, you're 7th level, right? 7th level, yeah. My lovely wife and my baby are behind me. Baby's getting a change. Kate who's a player in the game. They just hit 7th level is where they're at. And I was actually, I jumped all over the place with the leveling at first because I wanted them to experience XP because I hadn't done XP in the first like 3 or 4 campaigns that we had with them starting in 2015. I wanted them to have XP. They were using the point buy system. And I said, I want you guys to roll abilities. I want you guys to have the experience that I had. I want you to have to roll your abilities. I want you to get XP. I want you to feel what that is like. So we did all that and we were playing for a while. And then I was like, okay, I'm sick and tired of calculating XP. So then I just started basically going to like a three adventure system where they will be a level for 3 adventures and then go to the next level and then 3 adventures. And prior to that, in the years starting from 2015 to like 2019, I had done 1 level every adventure. And that was because me as myself, like our games would always collapse so much sooner than I wanted over a period of 35 years of playing. I never got to see 20th level. And I was so annoyed that I never got to see 20th level. So for the first 3 campaigns, they were going up a level every adventure and they got to 20th and played there for like 3 or 4 adventures before we switched. And I was like, I want you guys to be able to see the entire arc. But that wound up creating problems because the advancement was so fast that people couldn't really keep up. And I took that sort of feedback from my players and I said, okay, well, why don't I do XP next time? And then I just started to get bored with XP and I said, okay, how about we have a compromise between XP and leveling every adventure? And so I started to do the three adventure leveling thing now.
I think XP is an interesting that take a note, Jason. we need a podcast about experience points because I think experience points were something that old school players really like. They like the grind.
Yeah.
There's something about that they really like. They really get a kick out of. But newer players that I've played with, like, they want nothing to do with it. They're just like, you tell this. I'm here for, I guess it's the difference. A new player is there for the story. Mm-hmm. An old school player is there for the game, if that makes sense.
No, I understand.
And that is a horror. Like, I'm obviously painting with very broad strokes here, but because I'm sure there's people in opposite camps.
Yes.
But I think it's interesting that experience points has kind of become cumbersome for some people. And, we play a old school game on Thursday nights with some guys, and we're putting experience points. There's 10 players in the party. IDM, we got 10 players. It's it is a lot. It is a lot. And we're using a very old set of clone rules and experience points in there. Like they did the math together, and they're like, the number of things we have to kill to go up a level, like, it's not happening.
Right.
It's a long way off. So I think, everybody likes to level. Leveling's exciting. Like,
it's fun, yeah.
But I get what you mean, that if you did it every adventure, then maybe you don't get time to even sort of learn the mechanic before you're on to the next mechanic that your character gets.
Exactly. I try to always check in with my players because, I don't just want to be like, a dungeon master runs the kind of games that they want to play in, which is kind of like the blessing and the curse of a DM. I want to be in a Spelljammer game, but I'm not playing it and I'm running it.
Yeah.
But I want the players to have input. I want them to feel like they're affecting the game, not just inside, but on the outside. If they're not having fun leveling every adventure, if it's too much for them, then I want them to tell me. And I take that feedback and I try to either implement it immediately in that campaign or save it for the next campaign.
Do you find that your Spelljammer campaign gives you the opportunity to access monsters that wouldn't normally be accessed in a D&D campaign? Because when I started DMing it, like Mind Flayer Nautiloids, Beholder orb ships, and even the Neogai.
Yep.
These are monsters that in a regular campaign you don't see for quite some time. Yep. But in Spelljammer, you have an opportunity to just kind of go, like, there's a Beholder ship in port and they're trading.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I used Neogi in the very first adventure. They they got off their ships, their transport ships, and they went up, and I described sort of like the way the Rock of Brawl looked, and it was a busy city full of all these different races. And then there was a bunch of Neogi that got off one of the ships behind them, and they tried basically this really stupid invasion plan, and they got their asses kicked by a bunch of the people that were just on the street as well as the party. Everybody started pulling out laser guns and laser swords, and they just attacked this ill-fated group of Neogi. but I used them right away in the first adventure, and I'm using one of the characters from the book, which is a beholder barkeep named Luigi. And so right in the first adventure, I think it was the first adventure, but very early on, they met Luigi, the beholder bartender, at the Laughing Beholder Tavern, and he's been a character, and I love role playing him. He's a lot of fun. And in the last adventure, or the one before last, he even got to kick some ass using his eye stalks, because there was another episode that I had with the Neogi, but this time they came with a bigger force, and in the middle of this giant invasion, Luigi comes out of the bar. Spoilers for anybody that hasn't read or listened to the episode. And he comes out like shooting his eye stalks like all over the place and just like wiping out Neogi. So yeah, I love using the monsters, the unique monsters to Spelljammer.
And someone listening is going to say, I can put a beholder in my bar if I want to. Sure. Well, yeah, you can, but I feel like Spelljammer goes, here's the stereotype, but we're going to turn it a bit. And you're like, so, yep. Mind flares are more common out in space. So,
yep.
So here's a really spooky, scary monster that you maybe don't get to see that much. And all of a sudden now here it is. And you can run into the Nautiloid fleets a lot.
Yeah.
And here's the beholders. And it just kind of... I just like the way it goes. Like, these are normally monsters that you only like, oh, if we ever fight one of those,
we're dead.
And now here you go. Here they are.
Yeah, there's an Illithid, there's a Mind Flayer embassy on the rock. So Illithids are like walking around, Mind Flayers, and normally you're like, oh my God, that thing's gonna eat my brain, or the beholder is going to turn me to stone. But they all exist on the Rock of Brawl, and it's cool. Nobody wants to piss off, Prince Andrew, the guy who's running the rock. They want to have their trade sanctions. They want to be able to trade with other races and have a place to talk about wars or whatever they want to talk about. And so everybody just kind of keeps the peace, and it's really fun.
Jason, did you have something?
When you fall into a lot of sort of the standard games that we've played over the years, it really is a rotating list of about 12 monsters, right? That seem to come up for 80% of the encounters.
True.
And I think that's the one neat thing about sort of when you get into some of the different campaign settings and stuff. It's nice to mix it up. It goes back to being sort of a new player. Like, it isn't just goblins, kobolds, skeletons, and orcs. Like,
right.
We are going to see something that was in the back pages of that book. The pages were still crisp because you never needed to use it, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's so much content out there that maybe doesn't see the play it could or the play it deserves.
Yeah.
And, I think these sort of campaign settings allow a dungeon master to really sort of draw on all that fantastic stuff that's just sitting there waiting to be used.
Right. That's another reason why I wanted to do the Spelljammer campaign settings, is because there's so much there that never gets used. And I'm like, I'm going to try to use as much of this as possible until I get like sick of it, and just use all of it as much as I can and get it worked in there. And there's just so much stuff that I can do. I'm excited to see where the campaign goes. I have no idea how long it's going to last, but we'll see.
Gith Yankee are a favorite of mine.
Yeah, the Gith Yankee.
But they never work their way into my campaigns.
No.
But a Spelljammer campaign, you're going to find a Gith Yankee pirate. They're going to be there. I'm going to make sure they're in there, because this is my opportunity. And I think, we were going to talk about some other second edition settings. We haven't really gotten to them, but
I'm curious about
Spelljammer. I think Spelljammer came out of the fact that second edition kind of flooded the market with a lot of different settings, and Spelljammer was second edition's way of saying they can all be connected.
Yes, exactly.
Like, if you're buying, you don't have to buy just one. It's sort of a sales pitch. You don't have to buy just one line of campaign settings. You can buy them all and then connect them with a Spelljammer setting.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's
brilliant marketing. Brilliant marketing.
Was it brilliant marketing? I don't know. I think it's interesting. we're going to talk about some of the other campaign settings that came out of second edition, and Jason's going to take us even back to first. But your example of first is it made its mark in second as well. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that second edition created all these settings. Third, not so much.
No, really.
And fourth, again, no.
Not so much.
Fifth, no. But even Forgotten Realms it got its box set, I think, in second. Maybe it was first. But definitely in second.
Yeah.
And from there, I don't know what it was about second edition, but that was.
It's kind of a magical time.
I think it was. I think that's one of the reasons that fifth I like so much is because I feel it has a lot of connections to second, and I think second edition was a bit of a golden age. It was very easy to introduce players to second edition D&D, in my opinion.
Yep.
I introduced tons of people to D&D through the second edition age. So
when I think about D&D,
I'm excited about your Spelljammer game. I even think I might have to revisit it myself. I really like it. I really like it.
So you guys had mentioned the Lankmar setting.
Yes.
And I had never heard of it. I was surprised. I thought I'm not like a expert on D&D, but I know a lot about it. And when you had said that, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. So I had to go look it up. So I'm really excited to hear about that.
That's a segue. Let's do it.
Okay. So Lankmar for me really, and I'm a primarily first edition player. I quit playing I can remember some of my friends buying the second edition of books. At that point in time, I was turning 19. I'm not going to go into the details, but at 19, things change in your life, and you suddenly spend a little less time gaming with your friends.
Understood.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, you know what? Then you're a unicorn, because most of us who were playing D&D were like, that other portion of the life you're talking about, not so easily accessed for the guy playing first edition.
you poor man, you. We've talked about this is a totally different point. Either way, for me, Lankmar was home. It really was. We had played a lot of first edition, and in first edition, you had your standard dungeon crawls. Greyhawk came out. There was these mass wilderness things. We played the heck out of them. You played every weekend, all weekend, and then all of us, and we were reading fantasy, right? Fantasy novels were coming out. Things were starting to generate, and Appendix N. You start looking back to some stuff, and you discover Fritz Lieber.
Okay, wait a minute.
And
do we know what Appendix N is? Because Chris might not know. I didn't know.
No.
So in the back of the original Dungeon Master's Guide, there was a series of appendices. One of them was Appendix N, which listed a series of science fiction and fantasy novels that Gygax drew inspiration from in creating. And so he made a list of books like, hey, here's a bunch of books I read that really influenced me. If you really want to know about D&D, here's a list of, I want to say, it might have been 50 or more books.
Awesome.
These are, and so you start stumbling across, I discovered Lovecraft, I discovered, Tolkien, all the standards. And then Fritz Lieber was, in terms of being a young teenage boy, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser they're cooler, they're swagger. And it was the first time where we had spent all this time dungeon delving, and all of a sudden a campaign setting comes out, and it is a city. And it is not, the map in Lankmar alone was the most fascinating thing. It is a full-size tabletop map, individually hand-drawn, individual buildings, alleys, courtyards, a massive urban setting in a very low fantasy game. Very little magic items, strictly human races.
Okay.
Lots of political intrigue, lots of so
there was no elves, there's no dwarves.
Dwarves and elves are things that live out on the edges of mankind.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They're not optional as a player race. Neither really were. They had the same sort of a very similar corruption system if you wanted to play a magic user. At certain levels, you just started rolling deformities and defects, like drawing upon these dark powers. It started corrupting your body.
I think the actual rules, because I'm a rules lawyer, the actual rules for Lankmar said that wizards could not go past 5th level.
Really?
4th level and higher spells were in the game, but it required certain sacrifices on behalf of the wizard to gain that knowledge?
Well, wizards and illusionists became black wizards, and clerics and druids became white wizards, which were even rarer.
Interesting.
So it was we had talked about this in the movie thing too, sort of Philippe Gaston the Mouse, and then you get Stafford's iconic characters, the Grey Mouser. So he's taking it even a step further. He's a rogue. He studied a bit as a magician. He's got a couple of spells up his sleeve, and then they take the whole sort of seedy underworld of the city, and it's fighting between sort of the Thieves Guild, the Assassins Guild, and various churches, and it becomes sort of a political setting. It was a really refreshing change. It was a different type of story when module after module and setting after setting was, Caves of Chaos or a take on that. I'm not sure why it sticks with me, or even today it still resonates with me. I've recently started playing in a first edition campaign again that's very much has this feel to it. And you're like, this is such a great feeling, because it wasn't even just the low magic. It's like, well, you're in a city. Like, you can't wear a suit of armor in a city. If you're wearing a suit of armor in a city, the constable is going to pull you over because you're obviously up to no good. There's no reason for somebody to have a weapon or a suit of armor in a city. Everything was very subterfuge. Like
that wasn't the case in Lankmar, though.
I think it was the case in Lankmar.
I think you could carry blades and stuff in Lankmar.
I think the common people carried a knife. I actually just had the rules out a minute ago. But you may have to bribe some people occasionally to have a sword. And
I think if you want to know if you're right for a Lankmar game, I think Fritz Lieber, who created the world, not anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. He was a pulp sword and wizardry author, and I stumbled into him because I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, and Neil Gaiman on an interview or something, he was talking to someone. He began to talk about Fritz Lieber and his love of Mr. Lieber's writing. So I went and checked it out, and very short stories because it's pulp fiction, and all about Fafford and the Grey Mouser, and
a barbarian and a rogue adventuring through this monstrous
they're even more
city.
than that, though. Like the Grey Mouser does a stint as a magic user's apprentice and becomes a rogue, and actually they were statted. The two characters were statted out in the first edition Legend and Lore, or Deities and Demigods rather. Legend and Lore became and they had multiple levels in multiple classes.
Yes.
So even though you don't have dwarves, elves, demi-humans in that setting, the human characters were supposed to be sort of jack of all trades. Like, they had a couple levels in wizard, they had a couple levels in rogue, they had a couple levels in fighter, they maybe had a couple levels in ranger. Like, they were all over the place.
Stafford was a level 15 ranger, a 5th level bard, and a 5th level thief.
You have that there?
I have it right here. The Grey Mouser was a 10th level fighter, a 15th level thief, and a 3rd level magic user.
Multi-classing, man. Multi-classing.
Oh, look at you. That's right out of that book. And also
and then that's
the new and gods.
The multi-class. I think that was which was really neat. There was a very small pantheon, and they were really involved with everyday life. Like, the gods might ask you to do something for them, right? There was sort of that,
the city. Lankmar had these gods that were these undead beings that lived under the city, and they had their hands in all the thieves guilds. Like, if you want a campaign that's in a city with lots of guilds and lots of competition between the guilds, and then on top of that, there's this undercity that lurks below where the gods of Lankmar sort of lurk, these undead. There's actually a great piece of artwork with it looks like they're liches. There's like 4 or 5 of them. It's an old school piece of artwork. It's actually a depiction of the gods of Lankmar, and you know what else just hit me? The map that you were talking about, the gorgeous map. It had blank spaces in it where the DM had geomorphs he could plug in. And the idea was they should change because
you would have to venture into the heart of that city block to find out what, like, maybe there was maybe there was a shrine and a well, right? There was sort of,
but it wasn't necessarily the same when you came back, because the idea is the city's constantly changing and evolving.
Oh, really? That's cool.
that like
cool.
buildings are being torn down or fires happen, or so then you plug in a different geomorph the next time they're there.
I'm going to try and post on Instagram, but it's 100% was a huge selling feature for us, because you could be looking at a map just like a dungeon map and go, okay, we're going to take the alley on the right, and that's going to take us to that courtyard, and it showed the levels of the buildings. Well, we can access the first story of that building to the roof. From there, we can hack into the alley on the backside. So it was a very rogue-driven campaign, and I think a lot of it, by fondness, falls on the dungeon master who ran it, in that he ran a series of campaigns that were like, there's the Thieves Guild versus the Assassins Guild fighting for dominance in the city, and you think, okay, you remember the Thieves Guild,
but magic is very low too, right? Like if someone shows up with a glowing sword,
fight somebody, and they would pull a sword and it would be glowing, you would be like, this is one of the most powerful people in the city. Like, we should probably run. Nobody owns a +1 sword, and it was anything in that. And we talked about this with with Judge Brian and Grognard's, is there was no such thing as, it wasn't just a +1 sword. It was Night Whisper, the +1 sword, or it was, Heartseeker, the +1 bow. There was never just, it wasn't just a were-rat or a lich. It was, everybody was named.
It was named, yeah.
Generic, right? Because the fantastic was so rare, it became elevated in status. Even things that sort of would have just been, brushed off as mobs.
I could see the appeal of that if you were playing the game and it was so low magic, and then when something would come along, it was named, or somebody had a unique power, they were named. It was something very special.
And then you fight and you receive that, and you're like, this is my sword. Like, I am,
who's the big wizard? I want to say something like Ningobel of the 11 Eyes or something, and he's like a 10th level wizard, but he's been so mutated by magic, he now has he has like 10 eyes on eye stalks, and he keeps a hood up over his head. Like, it's really creative stuff. And
if you have a chance, it's definitely worth the read. Fritz Lieber stuff is really light, easy to read. There's no fluff. It's action packed. Like, it's two young adventurers in a big city, and they adventure out of the city. It's all on audiobook as well. You can get all of Fritz Lieber's works on audiobook. If you are a commuter, they're short pulp stories. Like, you can get through a story on your commute to work or home from work. So a little darker, a little grittier, low magic. Which part of I was like super excited when we started talking about this, because I'm like, we're really talking about 3 very different campaign settings. I mean, you're talking, when you think of Spelljammer, Dragonlance, and for me, Lankmore, those are 3 absolute ends of the spectrum. Those have been pushed as far apart as possible. One is a mass market high fantasy setting. Another one is this really wonderful, wonky sort of sci-fi, all-encompassing setting, and then sort of just an old school, low magic sort of gritty setting.
This is a good tie-in to Spelljammer, though. Appendix N, which you mentioned that Gary Gygax pulled from, a lot of that early swords and sorcery type of fiction had science fiction mixed in. Like, there were always portals to other worlds. We're not talking about like other planes. Like, it's not a portal to hell. It's a portal to another world on the other side of the universe. And finding like strange equipment from other worlds. How does it operate? How does it work? Again, Spelljammer can just pull all that stuff, and that's coming from original D&D sources. What was the adventure that I think did Gygax write? Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is a crash spacecraft.
Yes.
There's laser guns and everything in it. Yeah, it's totally going to where Spelljammer eventually gets in the earliest forms of Dungeons and Dragons. And most recently, Monty Cook and his gaming company brought out Numenera, which is a role-playing game, but they've gone on to do, I forget the name of the book, but it's basically bringing science fiction into your Dungeons and Dragons games, and strange technology and weirdness.
Back when he was developing Dungeons and Dragons, the prevalence of fantasy fiction compared to science fiction there was a severe imbalance. I mean, you had to draw from the sources you had, and science fiction was hot. I mean, it started in the 50s and started hard. I mean, it encompassed a lot more than sort of the classic fantasy genre. So, I mean, you were to be able to look at that and sort of just morph it or modify it and bring it into a fantasy world was a real talent for sure. But I think you work with the resources you had, and that was probably a predominant number of the sources.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, would you want to talk about what was your campaign setting of choice?
My campaign setting is Dragonlance.
Daddy, aren't you?
It's Dragonlance, and it's
Dragonlance.
what?
This was the big one. They had a lot resting on this. This was huge.
Well, it's the first set of novels that TSR puts out, I think. And I could be wrong, but
did they do Gorda Greyhawk?
Yeah, but I don't know if that came before or after Hickman and Weiss started writing the original Dragonlance series.
When did the Dark Elf trilogy come out? Was that Forgotten Realms?
That's Forgotten Realms.
Dark Elf trilogy. Okay.
Do you mean? Are you talking Crystal Shard and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well after. That's well after Dragonlance.
Okay. Dragonlance. Has everybody here read the Dragonlance novels?
I have not.
Yeah, I obviously have. But
can I say something? I want to say their first two trilogies, the first 6 books.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to read. Absolutely. If you get a chance, fantastic.
You don't even have to go the first 6. The first 3.
The Time of the Twins.
I know everybody likes the Twins trilogy, but I'm still stuck in the first trilogy. I like the first trilogy, The War of the Lance.
Just beautiful Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and then the second one, sort of I've advanced beyond just the thrill of the adventure, that the interpersonal story and either way, I'm not going to go spoil anything. Dragonlance, the first 6 books, probably 6 of the best sort of fantasy novels I had read at that age in my life. I'm not sure. I haven't reread them. I'm not sure how they hold up now.
I've reread them recently, and they would be good for. I don't think you don't need to be that old to read them.
Okay.
I think if you wanted to call them young,
they would be like
fiction,
young adult fiction now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
So what is the basic premise behind the Dragonlance campaign setting?
Okay, so I'll tell you what first of all, my draw.
Mm-hmm.
To Dragonlance, because I didn't even know what Dragonlance was about when I first found it. Was the art? The art is
didn't Larry
spectacular.
Didn't Larry Elmore do a bunch of art for that?
I know Larry Elmore did do a bunch of art. Yeah. I think Larry Elmore was the primary guy that was given Dragonlance as his art project.
Yeah, I met him at a convention. I got him to sign my DM
did
screen.
You?
My advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition DM screen. Amazing. I got him to sign it.
So I run a fundraiser for cystic fibrosis. My daughter has cystic fibrosis. Mm-hmm. So I run a fundraiser, and I reached out to Mr. Elmore one year, and he sent me two prints. What's that?
Say what the fundraiser is. Let's do a shout out. This is awesome.
The fundraiser is called Heroes for CF, and it's basically a fundraiser for cystic fibrosis, which my daughter has, and it's
Dungeons and Dragons marathon.
It's a Dungeons and Dragons marathon, and it's nice. The more money you raise, the more good loot I give your character, and then you run the day.
That's a great idea.
We started up. We could do a whole subject on it, but let's not get sidetracked on it. I love talking about Heroes for CF, but I'm really worried if I start down that trail, I'll just never come back. So Dragonlance, the artwork grabbed me, and as well, we have I'm bad with names, but Laura and Tracy Hickman worked on it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Laura and specifically Tracy Hickman is also responsible for Ravenloft. And Ravenloft was a favorite module of mine.
So awesome.
So here I've got these and I got hooked on Dragonlance kind of like Jason did with his Lankmore in first edition. So my love with Dragonlance starts in first edition when they start putting out these modules that retrace the novels, and it ends up being like a 14, 15. What are you pointing your finger at me for?
Have you read the novels before you, or was it novel?
I hadn't. I was
Really?
drawn. So I'm in my gaming store, and I see the cover for Dragons of Despair, and I'm going to see if I can find it here quick for you while I talk. So I see the cover of Dragons of Despair, and I'm like, I need to run this module. Like, this is, I don't know what this is. I don't know what Dragonlance is. So I take Dragonlance home, and now I'll sort of tell you. So here's what Dragonlance is for someone who's never played. The Dragonlance stories start off, and I'm going to give you the tales for War of the Lance, because that's where there's so many ages you can play here. But in War of the Lance, there are no clerics. This is the artwork.
Cool.
This in particular piece I love.
Yep.
So War of the Lance starts, there's no clerics. And the story is that your party, the first module, your party has, they're all about between 3rd and 5th level now, and your party has gone out all over the world trying to find signs of true healing magic. They can't find any. They all come back to their hometown of Solus, and they share their stories of the world that they found. And while they're there, the war kicks off, and they find true cleric magic, and from there the story just sort of unravels, and it turns into a massive saga. And if you run the modules, they're very exciting. I've never run them all fully, but the first sort of 5 modules I have run numerous times with friends. And I think that's where the bit of nostalgia comes from me, is I can remember sitting around friends' houses doing weekend-long marathons, staying up to ridiculous hours in the morning, and we were playing these Dragonlance adventures. And the artwork was fantastic. So everybody at the table got to see that gorgeous stuff that Larry Elmore put out, and it gave us all a frame of reference. And dragons play a very prominent role. For a game called Dungeons and Dragons, not many people's adventures actually have dragons in them anymore.
That's true.
I mean, if you're a DM and you've run a couple campaigns, really think, how many times have I had a dragon in there? There's a dragon in every, like, that's another thing. Dragons have disappeared from the world, and all of a sudden they all come back. They took Tiamat and they changed her into an evil dragon goddess named Takesis. And
Takesis, that sounds familiar.
Yes. So Takesis is Dragonlance's Tiamat. In the Dragonlance world, gold and silver are nothing. You collect steel. Your coins are steel coins, because steel can be made into weapons. And this is during a war. And
what was the level of magic like? Was it high, low?
Ridiculously high. So it's ridiculously high, but the magic in Dragonlance has its own set of rules. So there are 3 moons. Each moon is a god or goddess of magic, and they lawful, neutrality, and evil. Good, maybe not lawful. Good, neutrality, and evil.
Sure.
And then depending on where the moons are in the sky affects your spell casting in the early editions of Dragonlance. As well, when you reach the ability to cast, I want to say 3rd level spells, you have to go to the Towers of High Sorcery to do your testing. And then you are, just like in Harry Potter, you're either a black-robed evil wizard, a red-robed neutral wizard, or a white-robed good wizard. And if you do not go to the Towers of High Sorcery and continue to practice magic, the understanding is that magic is so powerful that you become what they call a renegade wizard. And renegade wizards have to be hunted down by the Tower of High Sorcery wizards to be brought to justice. Elves play a big role. Dwarves play an interesting role. They are very much like the dwarves that Tolkien introduces us to, but with a little bit of a twist. There's a couple sub races of dwarves. Gully dwarves are everyone's favorite from Dragonlance, because they're these sort of, gully dwarves can't count above 2, so it doesn't matter what they're dealing with, they can't count above 2. What else is there? This Kender, is that what you said?
Not the Kender. I think that was the introduction of the Kender race.
That was like a halfling kind of, right?
There is no halflings. There are only Kender.
Okay, yeah.
And Kender is like a halfling dialed up to 11. You all like Kender borrow things. And the other thing about Kender are they cannot feel fear. They just don't understand what that is. So game mechanically, you are never frightened. You're never afraid of anything. Just imagine a curious, need to pickpocket everything, not afraid of anything. Like, oh, my friends are over there. Well, they won't mind if I just sneak off over here and check this out. Like and Tasselhoff Burfoot is the sort of the Kender of the party for the Fellowship of the Lance.
And I think that's the important part about the novels. In case you know, it really covers all the archetypes, right? Like every character trope that you're going to see in Dungeons and Dragons is a member of this party, right? You have the knight who's sworn to a code. You have you have the steadfast old dwarf, and his family and his father leave you. You have the mischievous sort of rogue, and then in some neat stuff you can.
Uh-oh, you guys froze. Oh no!
Fantastic characters.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, you guys froze for about 10 seconds there.
That might happen.
So the last thing I heard you say was that they had basically the quintessential party of different characters there.
Yeah, and that was a cool thing about buying the modules is that all the characters from the books were in the back of the modules, so you could actually play the characters from the books, and they had all kinds of supporting artwork with it. As I said, Dragonlance, just picking up those modules, that artwork firmly cemented you into the world of Dragonlance. There are no orcs in Dragonlance. There are goblins, but not orcs. And there are the dreaded Draconians, which are sort of the earliest forms of Dragonborn.
Yeah, they always die
Draconian
in some interesting way. They always die in some interesting way.
Exactly. Every Draconian has some sort of death rattle. It doesn't go out just dead. It has something where like it turns to stone and your weapons stick in it. They turn to a pool of acid. They explode. Yeah. So the story of Dragonlance, it came after for me. It was the artwork and the modules having so much. Like when you open these modules up, the maps were incredible, and you have Hickman writing them, and I mean he's good. I mean, there's nothing. He's good. He and the ones he didn't write, he sort of oversaw, is my understanding, and so that, I mean, just dragons. Imagine everybody wants a hero that rides a dragon. Everybody wants a hero that like the dragon is their friend, or there's just so much there that's like sort of quintessential Dungeons and Dragons for me. That Dragonlance. I will say though that the downfall here is that I'm intimidated to run Dragonlance now, because you're messing with canon, and I'm like, do I want to step in there and mix that up? Sometimes canon can be intimidating. I didn't run Forgotten Realms for the longest time because I hadn't read a lot of Forgotten Realms, and I knew my players had read Forgotten Realms stuff, and I was like, they're going to call me on something like, hey, that's not how it works here. It's the same reason that I have a hard time jamming Star Wars role-playing games. It's because I love Star Wars, but someone out there is always a bigger expert than you, and there's going to be a piece of canon that you trip up on, and they're going to call you on it, and then it's fine to say, well, it's your world and you do what you like, but there's still a piece of you that goes, yeah, but I really wanted it to be on the mark, and yeah. So and I think Dragonlance, of the 3 campaign settings we're talking about, I think it's the most maybe stereotypical.
Sure.
It certainly has a homebrew feel where, like, okay, there's no halflings, there's Kender, and there's no, even the paladin class is not available. There's a knight class, the Knights of Solamnia, and they have all different orders that you can choose to join as well. But but I feel like it's as sort of it's vanilla D&D turned up, and it's probably the furthest from Lankmar. I mean, high magic in Dragonlance is time traveling and all kinds of stuff going on, whereas Lankmar is like, if you cast that magic missile spell, you might grow a third eye, so be careful. And then awesome. Spelljammer, the it's limitless, the ends of what you can do with Spelljammer. I think that's one of the great things about Spelljammer.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the reasons why I'm running it. I'm very excited about that. And, this has been a great discussion, and I'm really excited because I didn't know anything about Lankmar at all. And you brought back a lot of things that I remember from Dragonlance too, like the Draconians, that was something that was burned into my brain. When you brought it up, I was like, oh my God, I remember fighting those things.
If anyone plays World of Warcraft out there and you ride griffins if you're the Alliance and you ride wyverns if you're the Horde, you have Dragonlance to thank for that. The bad guys had griffin stations where they rode from battlefield to battlefield, and the good guys had griffin stations and the bad guys had wyvern stations. So if you play that's, I think that's lifted directly from Dragonlance.
Awesome, cool. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about real quick? I mean, we've done about a little over an hour, I think, here. We've had a really good discussion. This has been an awesome cross promotion. Again, I did this with like one other group, and that was a lot of fun. But we didn't go in depth as much as we did here. And so, I mean, I'm really excited that you guys wanted to come and do this. Maybe we can do it again in the future. I mean, this has been a huge pleasure for me. So I hope you guys have had fun.
Yeah, no, I have, Jay.
And we totally get sidetracked. Horrible. We're like,
that's okay.
Getting sidetracked. There's times where we're like, did we just cover 3 topics? I think we covered 3 topics.
We did.
It's a very loose thing, and I mean, it's just not, like I said, we've talked about this. It's all about community building. It's fantastic to talk to other people who are passionate about the same thing you're passionate about, and I guess the fact that the current situation in the world has resorted to us doing this electronically kind of sucks in terms of gameplay, but it also opens up the fact that we've talked to people that we would maybe never have had the opportunity to talk to, or never would have thought to talk to. I mean,
we're crossing a border here, right? Because if maybe the listeners have already noticed, but new due to boot it here in Canada. I mean, I don't think I have an accent.
I don't think you do either.
Chris doesn't have an accent.
Before we did this, I actually went online and looked up, because you're in New Hampshire.
Yes, we're in New Hampshire. Yeah.
This is going to sound, you don't want to throw it out there. There's a very Canadian thing. When you think about America, you're like, they don't know anything about us. The Americans don't know about Canadians. And then they're like, New Hampshire? I don't know anything about New Hampshire. And you're like, I am what I think other people are.
Right.
This will blow some people's minds. It is possible that
almost in Canada. You literally share a border with Quebec.
Yeah, I've driven up to the border and crossed over a couple times.
Right. It's entirely possible that Chris is further north than you and I.
I looked at a map. He is technically further north.
I am.
Geographically, we are in the bottom part of southern Ontario.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Someone out there listening just got their mind blown. How could it be?
I was like, New Hampshire? I'm like, I know kind of where it is, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I said, no, she's like, what are you looking up? I'm like, well, I don't want to look like an idiot. I mean, I don't know what the cultural differences are. And I'm like, and then I'm looking at like pictures. I'm like, it looks like he lives in Ontario. It looks like Ontario to me. There's a very similar feel. I was like, it was a pleasant surprise. You guys have maple syrup?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You guys have maple syrup. Would you stop right now? Right now.
Because at one point in time, before we were going to do this, I had tried to work out a list of questions. I was like, I'm going to ask Jeremy and Chris like questions like, who brings an alcoholic beverage to your table at your game tonight? What's the difference between New Hampshire and Ontario? What would somebody bring?
Do you have your questions?
I didn't bother writing them out. What would somebody bring as a drink to a game at your table? Jeremy, first.
Tim Hortons
Alcoholic
coffee.
and non-alcoholic.
Tim Hortons coffee.
Alcoholic.
If you don't know what Tim Hortons is, it's a coffee donut shop in Canada that basically, like, I live in a very, very small town, and there are 3 Tim Hortons in it. It is like a blue collar Starbucks. It is like we have 3 Tim Hortons in my town and 1 Starbucks. And you know, everybody is up here in Canada. You call it Timmy's. You don't even call it Tim Hortons. You just call it Timmy's.
And you don't even talk about coffee. That's like a double probably.
Yeah, no, I only drink one. I dropped the sugar long ago. So alcoholic beverage, most times it's beer, and of late, like, there's so many I don't know what it's like in the States, but there's so many microbreweries in Canada right now.
Yeah.
New Hampshire. A bunch of guys get together at a table on a Saturday night to game. What are they drinking?
Well, there's a bunch of commercials that play that say that New England, which is New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, it's a bunch of the Northeast up here. It says New England runs on Dunkin', and so people.
I've actually heard that.
Yeah, people would bring like Dunkin's coffee. Sometimes iced coffee. Like Greg, he loves iced coffee. He's always drinking iced coffee. And other people like we live kind of in a suburb of like the major city, which is Manchester, and so people like will drive out to mine and Kate's house to play. I really miss that, and they would usually bring Dunkin's with them. As far as alcohol goes, no one in the group really brings alcohol to the table. I don't think it's. I mean, I don't know. I don't think people have a prejudice against it or whatever, because people do drink, but for some reason it doesn't really seem to come up at the table. I don't really know why in particular, but it's usually just like iced coffee. It's usually caffeine because people have worked and we play on Fridays and they're like, I have to stay awake for this game.
Being honest, alcoholic beverages coming to the D&D table has only been something sort of in the last maybe 10, since Jason arrived at my gaming table, but no, in the last, when we were younger, we never, it was all, even when we were old enough to drink, people were still bringing, like, it was cans of soda.
Yeah.
We call it pop.
No.
Jason calls it soda because he's a hipster. He thinks he's cool because he calls it soda in Canada, but in Canada we call it pop.
No. Okay, so here's my thing. So somebody brings a snack to the table. There's food on the table. Somebody's brought a bag of something. What is it? What is it here
in Canada?
And what is it in New Hampshire?
Potato chips.
Okay, here's the thing. And I already knew somebody was going to say this. What flavor? And you can't say plain.
Well, I like salt and vinegar, but I think a Canadian flavor. I don't know that they have this in the States. Ketchup chips.
Ketchup chips? I've never heard of ketchup chips.
Do you have you have Lay's in the States?
Yes,
right?
We have Lay's. Yes.
Okay, so in Canada there are Lay's ketchup.
Ketchup flavored.
And if you want a flavor of chip that will mark up your Dungeons and Dragons books quicker than anything else, ketchup. Red ketchup dye from red chips.
Our snacks are usually like brownie bites, chocolate chip cookies, Oreos, sweets basically.
We had a guy that started pushing veggie trays, and good for him. It was Guy. You know who Guy is, Jason. Guy would show up with veggie or fruit trays.
Lamont always brings something that's gummy and sour.
Yes, always a sour candy. Always.
Here's the thing I wanted to ask as 2 dungeon masters, and this was something. Okay, so I have like a series of like 3 questions. If we get to ask 2 dungeon masters living in 2 different countries, if you bump into a new dungeon master, he's run Lost Mines of Phandelver. He's now standing in the bookstore looking at those 12 shiny, glossy, hardcover campaign books. Which one would you recommend? What's something you're like, I ran that or I played in that, and you know what? I love that.
I'll let Chris go first.
What I would probably do is I would say to that person, if you want to run kind of like a very simple, straightforward kind of cookie cutter D&D game, do the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. It's got the Forgotten Realms. It's got Waterdeep. It's got, Neverwinter. It's got all those things you've heard about, you've seen in games and different kinds of publications and whatnot. If you've heard of that stuff and you kind of want to see what it's all about and just get the good general D&D experience, go for that. That's what I would say. And then I'd probably start going through all the books and saying, this is good if you want this is good if you want that. And I would say, what kind of flavor do you want to play? And then whatever they tell me, I'd point them to the book that had the proper flavor.
Jeremy, you got one?
Okay. This has recently changed for me because I would have immediately told them to pick up, what's the one? I can see the image in my head. What's the bar in Waterdeep that they did all the
Portal?
The Yawning Portal. I would have put in the Yawning Portal for two reasons. The Sunless Citadel is a great little starter adventure. It's a little dungeon crawl heavy, but there's lots of places to branch out from that with their own game. Like they can do a sequel to it and things like that. Really easy. Forge of Fury, one of my favorite sort of early adventures. It's a third level adventure and it has a dragon in it, which makes it even better. It's a dungeon and a dragon. And you can see a pattern here with my thinking. And I think that, however, I'm going to tell you something. Curse of Strahd.
So good.
I've run so much Ravenloft that when 5th edition came along, Curse of Strahd came out, I just went, no, thank you. I did buy the book because I'm a completionist, but
you can see them behind him. I can see them.
There's a lot of stuff behind him. Yeah.
But I didn't run it, and now I'm playing in Curse of Strahd. A friend of mine, she's DMing it, and it's amazing. Mm-hmm. They've fleshed that out.
It's really good.
Yeah. And I think of all, and there's so much support out there for it. Like there are people, if you go on to like Patreon, there's like an artist that has like done these amazing pictures of all the locations in Curse of Strahd. So you could just drop those pictures. Like if you're playing online, you're going to be able to put them right in front of your players. But if you're playing around a table, like it's just a matter of hiding them on a laptop and spinning it around. Curse of Strahd is, I think it's 5th edition's masterpiece, to be entirely honest.
Yeah.
The more I've looked at it, you have to like dark
Gothic horror. Yeah.
Gothic. It doesn't have to, you don't have to focus on the horror.
True.
You can make it lighter.
True.
But I just think as a one book setting, like Barovia is only maybe 3 towns and a whole bunch of adventure locations.
Right.
I think a DM could do so much with that. And I think there's so much support out there for that material that if you had finished Lost Mines of Phandelver, you could easily have that party wander into the Mists of Ravenloft and pick up in Barovia.
Okay, now you're looking for your next question. You're both dungeon masters, opposite sides of an international border. Oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of people playing this race class archetype. Does nobody play anything but? Is there something you just seem to find every party or every adventure has one of these? Follow-up question. My God, I would love to sit down at a table where somebody is playing this.
I'm going to let you take that, Jeremy. I'll be back in just a sec.
Sure. Chaotic Neutral.
This goes back to the alignment conversation.
Warlock Tiefling.
It does seem like an archetype.
I'm done with that.
You're done with that, eh?
I'm done with that. It's so stereotypical. Also, Tieflings that speak with a Russian accent. Thank you, Critical Role.
Oh, I wasn't sure where you're going there, but now I see it. I don't watch a lot of Critical Role.
I am over that. I like Critical Role, but I'm just like.
But Tieflings in general, it looks like so.
Yeah, Tiefling Warlock in particular, though. Tiefling Warlock with Chaotic Neutral as their alignment. I mean, I'm just done with that. And basically the what's her name in Critical Role? Laura.
Laura
an amazing, amazing role player. But I'm so tired of the Russian Tiefling Warlock. Yeah, that's what I would love, a warlock. So what I would love to come to the table, I would like to take that exact thing that I hate, and I would like to turn it on its head. So my idea is that you bring a lawful, the opposite alignment, maybe lawful, neutral, lawful, good. You make it a you can keep tiefling, but instead of or tiefling, however you want to say it, instead of the Russian, you don't give him horns, you give him like little moose antlers, and he's Bob and Doug McKenzie. I don't know if people are going to know that reference, but he becomes like, good day, eh? Hey, eh? Yeah, how you doing, eh? Like, you just play up the Canada so hard on that tiefling.
We talked
I would
about
love to see that.
I'm getting tired of like every dwarf being Scottish. I'm like, they should just be French Canadian. I would love this to have.
If you could have a dwarf calling someone a tabernacle.
Let's not get. Chris, is there a particular character type you're like, oh my god, I guess maybe it's just new players or it's hot on the scene, but I seem to see this character all the time.
Probably the one that I see most often is Goliath Barbarian. It seems to be a combination that people always gravitate to, and I don't hate it. It just seems to be very common that people will do. If they're going to play a barbarian, they usually will play a Goliath. I don't see any other kind of a race paired with barbarian, which is fine. Whatever.
Younger guys, because I played a couple of online campaigns, and there's like a couple younger guys, and barbarians and monks. Young guys want to punch stuff. I don't know what it is. They just need to be beefy, and they just want to be able to like bust down doors.
Yeah. As far as your second question goes, I would want to see something unusual, like maybe a Warforged wizard or something like, something that you just wouldn't really put together, something where the racial ability bonuses don't really match up with the class, but you're doing it strictly for the flavor. I think something like a Warforged wizard would be really fun.
Can I amend my answer?
You're not worrying about the numbers.
You want to amend your answer?
Can I make the first amendment to my answer? The first amendment to my answer is I would actually love to see the stereotypical dwarf fighter, the stereotypical halfling rogue. I don't see them anymore.
That's true.
Now everything is like an Arakra monk or Aarakocra monk, or a Tabaxi rogue, or like, I'm just like, what happened to vanilla? And I guess people are done with it, but just being the old fart that I am, I would like to see people go back to those.
I understand.
Okay. Games that are not Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition in and around your community. What's hot? What's moving? What have you noticed is like, I suddenly seeing people playing this other game, or is it just predominantly 5th edition? Is it literally got that hold?
Well, are you talking like tabletop role-playing games or tabletop games more broad?
You know what? I think we can expand into tabletop games. One of the things I like to do at Old Men Rolling Dice is I'll often post stuff that isn't a role-playing game, because I really think that if you're really passionate about gaming, it isn't limited to just role-playing. I think gamers are very open-minded people, and they're very willing to try almost anything. So.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much the only tabletop RPG we play is D&D. I've encouraged my players. I would love to do one-shots where the other players from Knights of Roleplay will do something like, I don't care if it's My Little Pony, but I would like to have each one of them like pick something that they like and do an adventure. I think that'd be a lot of fun. What we play most often outside of D&D is we play Magic. Magic the Gathering. That's pretty much what we play if we're not playing D&D. And when the world wasn't in a pandemic, we would get together for game nights and we would play things like Betrayal at House on the Hill. We would play
I have the Scooby-Doo version. I got the Scooby-Doo version, and I have not been able to play it yet. I have not been able to play it.
Yeah, I have the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate.
Oh, okay, cool. Yes,
which is fun. It's the D&D version, so we definitely have played that. So pretty much, those are the kind of things that we play outside of D&D.
And that's the great thing is it is beyond the pandemic, which I think I don't even know why I need to state that anymore. It is a great time to be a gamer. There is a lot of great stuff on the market. Like, and it's not just stuff, it's quality stuff. Like, there is fantastic products out there everywhere you look. The more you look, the more you find. You're like, I could literally end up with a room that looks like DM Jeremy's, where I have shelves and shelves of games. It is so easy to do. Jeremy, what else are you playing or are you seeing being played that isn't D&D 5th edition?
It's the best of times and the worst of times, right? So, like, there's tons of people playing D&D. Unfortunately, they will only play D&D 5th edition. I have tried other role-playing games. You and I have played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu, but
I've heard that's good. I've heard it's good.
Call of Cthulhu is so good. I bought the Alien role-playing game because I'm a big fan of Alien. Aliens
is awesome.
I don't. No one is ever playing anything else other than D&D. There's so much good role-playing game, so many good role-playing games out there. I cannot get a group to try it. They will not leave their comfort zone. They're like, nope, D&D 5e scratches all my itches. I'm not moving from this place.
I used to play a lot of other different games. Like I used to play, Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Ascension. I used to play Ars Magica. I used to play GURPS. We had all kinds of other things that we played back in the day, but now it's just 5th edition D&D.
At one point, I had a huge, very long running game of Werewolf the Apocalypse going. Mm-hmm. It went on for, I bet you, a year and a half, 2 years. Nice. And it was so much fun. I'd love to play Vampire the Masquerade. I bought the newest edition by, who's it by now? It's being published by Morphidius or something. Anyway,
it's not White Wolf anymore. It's something different.
No, it's not. It's not White Wolf anymore. It's been passed around, but the new edition is great. I've read through it and I really like it. Okay. I want to play Numenera, but no one will. I can't get a group to play with me. What else do I have back here?
Yeah, a lot of stuff back there.
I'd love to. I'd actually like to play the new Pathfinder 2nd edition. Mm-hmm. I'd like to give that a shot. But people are comfortable. 5th edition is so easy. It's so easy to pick up that it's hard. It's then hard to introduce something that's a little more crunchy. People are like, why all this? Why can't we go back? Like, it's so much easier on that side of the fence. So yeah, I'm not. It's really not a complaint because it's never been easier to find a D&D game.
True.
Okay. Is there a favorite local gaming store anybody wants to give a shout out to right now? In case this audio ends up getting used, there's a reality it might get chopped. But does everybody have a gaming store where you're like, this is my stop. This is where I go to for all my needs?
Well, I know
yours.
I want to hear, Chris, if there's a good store in New Hampshire that Chris goes to.
I two of my friends from high school, they have a store that they opened up in the city of Manchester that I mentioned, which is
that's awesome.
The biggest city in New Hampshire, and which isn't still very big compared to New York or LA, but it's big for us. And they have
dude, we're in Canada. We don't even know what big cities are really. Toronto. By the way, if you want to be a real Canadian, you don't say Toronto. You say Toronto.
How big is the city that you guys live in?
Probably
we're in a suburb. How many is it here, Jay?
Is it 10,000?
It's not. I don't think it's even 10,000. And hang on a sec. I'll find out right now how many people are. The biggest city to us is a place called Brantford. Okay. And it's not a big city.
No, we are literally in the suburbs. I live in a very, very...
Brantford, 100,000 people.
Okay, yeah. Manchester is 120,000, 25,000 maybe, somewhere around there. And the store is called Double Midnight Comics, and they do online ordering during the pandemic and stuff. They do curbside pickup, all that kind of thing. And my friends that I went to high school with run it, so it's always nice to go in there and say hi to them. Yeah.
Do they have playing space in the store?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
This is something that I'm seeing happen. This was not something when I was a kid that was available.
No,
but now. You wouldn't open a gaming store without some playing space.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, they do Magic and D&D and I think Pokemon and some other things there. Maybe HeroClix and stuff.
Do they do any Warhammer?
I don't think I've ever seen them advertise it. I'm not saying that people probably can't go in there and just use the space however they want. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that they run any kind of Warhammer events, but I could be wrong.
You can let the boys at Double Midnight Comics know that they have another follower on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
No, that's no problem.
In our little town, we have the Devil's Bench.
Devil's Bench.
Yeah, there's 2 gaming stores in town, and both are good. But I just made a connection with the Devil's Bench early on when they opened, and they're it's like a little. It's not big. It's a very small store, but it does have some gaming space, and mostly wargaming is done there. Warhammer 40K, which I play, but not to the sort of levels of fandom that erupt at the store. And then Wednesday nights we sort of take over the store for D&D. And myself, I DM there, and there's another. Do you only DM with your home group, Chris?
Lately, yes, but like I said, I mean, any opportunity that I have to introduce another group, the Twitch thing for Extra Life. Occasionally, I did stuff at a store in Concord, New Hampshire, which is about 20 minutes north of us, and that is Collectibles Unlimited. And Mike is a friend of mine there, and I ran some like game day stuff for 4th edition. So if I have an opportunity to do stuff, especially with new players, I will do it, but it's primarily just my home group.
Actually, that was one of the points I think we made in the end of the things new players bring to the table. Jeremy made a speech. He's like, as a DM, if you ever get a chance to game at your local gaming store, meet new people, build the community, and he's like, and if I remember correctly, he's like, it makes you up your game because you want to be the best you can be. You know your friends and family are going to give you leeway,
right?
But when you're gaming for somebody, you want to show them the best that you can be. He's like, it's really good practice. And it's not just...
If I have a bad week and I don't get prep time in, and me and my buddies sit down on the weekend to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm not quite prepped as well as I should, they're all going to have to suck it up and just take it because I had a busy week. But if you're going into the store to run a game, like you do, you up your game, and on top of that, you want. This is just me because I'm maybe too prideful, but I want everyone walking off of that table going, Jeremy's the best DM I've ever been with. Like that was the best game of D&D I've ever had. We have to go home and tell Steve, our DM, he sucks because Jeremy's where it's at. Like, that's the kind of reaction I'm aiming for when I DM for a group of people I've never DM'd for. And I'm not saying I get it all the time, but in my mind, that's where I want to be, that they leave that table going, if we could have Jeremy DM for us every time.
Yeah, it's amazing how your descriptions get so much more in depth, and you have so much more excitement in what you're doing.
What's he wearing? Chainmail. What do you mean? What kind of chainmail? Like metal chainmail, dude. He's wearing chainmail. And then at the store, like, what's he wearing? Oh, he's wearing chainmail, and it's gritty. It's dirty. It's been out in the field for a while, and he's obviously a veteran. Like, I don't give that to you at home. Screw you guys.
Yeah.
We're getting near the end of this, I'm sure, but one of the last points I want to make is I've listened to some of your podcasts, and it is fantastic. I like the sense of humor. It resonates with me. One of the things I've noticed the most, and this is about to become a very hot topic, is people who sing while they play. I play a game where somebody occasionally will sing. That somebody who will sing is currently on this podcast with us. And I love him dearly, and he means the world to me, but he is not a great singer.
Does Chris have singers?
Have you not heard? There is a female that plays in your game.
Sarah, yeah.
Absolutely. She must be a professional singer. There's no question about it.
She has been a professional singer. She was a big band singer. She's very well trained, yes.
When I hear her do her vicious mockery or some sort of doing, you're like, holy crap, this woman actually sings.
She's awesome. Yeah, she's very talented.
Saying I
can't? We could send him the clips if you would like, and he can compare them.
Okay, I'm not saying there's not sometimes that I don't go. Never mind. I'm not even getting into it.
No, Sarah is professionally trained. She is.
There is something wrong with me that when people talk, I can take something they say and immediately click into a song.
You can click it into a song, yes.
Like someone says respect, and I go Aretha Franklin on that. And
I didn't say you couldn't click it. Can't sing it.
He's just saying you couldn't sing it. That's what he's saying.
I'm really hurt by that. I'm really hurt by that.
You have top-notch click. You click things in beautifully. There's no question about your click. My point is, if you have not heard Sarah sing, you absolutely scan through some. It is. I was like, you're listening to podcasts and you're like, oh, that's funny. Oh my God, that's good. Oh, I see what they're doing there. And then you're like, holy crap! Somebody just sang who like has an ear. Like somebody sang who knows how to sing. It was super awesome. I just want to do a shout out to Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah. Yep. And if people want to listen, to
this is not about Sarah. This is about putting a boot in my ass. That's what this is about.
I like good singing when I heard good singing. And
the singing is in the In Volo's Wake series, because when my wife was pregnant and we knew the baby was coming, we recorded In Volo's Wake. We did 6 parts, and I had each of the other people DM one of the parts. It was the first time that any of them had actually DM'd like a story-driven kind of adventure. They had done battle royals. I wrote battle royals for them, and they ran the battle royals just as kind of like getting their feet wet. And then for In Volo's Wake, I had them run like a story type adventure, and they took the first 4, and I actually got to play in the first 4. So I was so excited I got to play as a player. And then I ran part 5 and 6. So I'm not quite sure where it is, but Sarah does play a bard at some point, and she plays the bard, I think, in the last 2 or 3 adventures, maybe parts 4, 5, and 6. But somewhere in there, I think toward the second half and toward the end, she starts playing a bard, and and she's an amazing singer. So it was really fun to be a part of.
It was a fantastic thing to hear. It's nice when you hear, because I mean, with a podcast, it really is an audio sort of medium. I mean, the voice means so much, and you guys do some. I think I heard a snake person at one point in time.
Yes.
Really great role playing. I like, but then the singing hit me, and I was like, "Oops, sorry, pen." The singing hit me, and I was like, "Wow, this person isn't just singing. Like this person." It was, and so I just wanted to make sure that got mentioned, because it was something I really found amazing.
That's great. I mean, we appreciate it. I mean, I know Sarah will be tickled to pink about it, so we really appreciate that. And I also enjoyed the stuff I listened from you guys. I had never heard of Hawk the Slayer. Actually, I'm sorry, I'd heard of Hawk the Slayer, the movie, but I had never watched it. And so now I have to go watch it now because I listened to that episode of you guys.
It is horrible.
I'm sure it is, but I got to go watch it.
And yet there's something about it that just is. He was the right man for his time at the right place.
We have a cartoon episode coming up. We're doing 80s cartoons.
Nice. I will definitely.
We're going to record it on Friday, and
I had to dig deep for this one too. I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. Okay, so Old Men Rolling Dice. Check them out on Twitch and also wherever you get your podcasts. And we are Knights of Roleplay. And guys, I mean, this was great. I love meeting you guys. We're definitely kindred spirits. It's great to talk to people in Canada. This is a very unique experience. A lot of fun. It's been snowing here all day, just so you know. Like, it's been just snowing constantly. What's the weather been like for you guys today?
Snow. Not as much. Today it warmed up. It got above freezing, and we had a little bit of melt happening. A little bit of melt. Like the roads got plowed this morning, and then the temperature rose just enough that you can see asphalt again. But awesome. You know what? We've had a pretty light winter.
Okay.
Like it's been
up until like the last sort of week and a half. Yeah.
Like we had no snow in December.
None. Wow.
None. Nothing through. Not a whole lot through January, and then right here at the end of February, we've been dumped on. Yeah, we are not in the Canadian. Okay. There are Canadians out there right now, like in Alberta and Saskatchewan, cursing us. But, like they know what snow is. They know what snow is. We have one of my wife's bridesmaids.
Neither one of them want to talk to me right now.
Where are they?
North Bay and Ottawa.
Oh, Tanya's bridesmaid is in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories.
That's a lifestyle choice.
Like they've had snow since.
Yeah, June.
Yeah, no kidding. No, like September probably. September. Yeah, the sun doesn't even go like they have seasons where the sun doesn't go down, and then they have seasons where the sun doesn't come up. So that is not. If you want to, Jason and I are like a half an hour from Buffalo.
Right. Yep.
So
yeah.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah,
We're just going to give a quick shout out to Knights of Roleplay as well. We've obviously enjoyed this immensely. I can see from the smile on Jason's face. I think he was holding on to that singing thing right till the end. And you know what? You talk a good game. You talk a good game, Jay. You're like, I like it when people bring funny voices. I like when people just throw it all out there on the table. I threw it all out there on the table for you, and then you're like, you stink, dude. You stink, dude. So
just hopeful.
You literally Rochambeau'd me. You Rochambeau'd me. So Knights of Roleplay, I think we should probably do this again.
Sounds good.
We should probably do this again. I would love to do that. And maybe if the opportunity ever presents itself, maybe we could do like a mixer where we get half an Old Men Rolling Dice crew and half a Knights of Roll. We could do a one shot maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to do that. Yeah. Sounds great.
That, we'll see. We'll awesome. Like cross this border again with role playing.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds great, guys.
Well, thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you for having me as well. It was great to do the cross promotion. You guys are awesome.
And we always sign off with good night, Dick.
Okay.
I can't help it. Say it, Jay.
Does that mean something?
No, it doesn't. I don't know why. The first time we ever did a podcast, I think I was nervous. I didn't know how to end it. And I think I said good night, Dick. Was there an old talk show that ended on good night, Dick?
I don't know. I think it's just a level of potty humor you have. I really feel like channeling your inner 13-year-old.
Okay, Jason.
Our last interview had 4 girls on it. We didn't know how to end it, did we?
No,
how do you say good night, Dick? After we talked about women role playing. I'm going to shut up now. I have diarrhea of the mouth. I'm done.
Okay. Good night, Dick.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review anywhere this podcast can be found. Our social media links, plus additional content, can be found on our website at knightsofroleplay.com. Please tell your friends about Knights of Roleplay and Adventuring Podcast, and spread the word through social media. Your help and support are greatly appreciated.